It was never supposed to be a song. A guitarist was just fooling around, stretching his fingers, playing something he thought sounded silly, almost like a child's exercise. Nothing serious, nothing worth remembering. And yet, that throwaway riff would become the key to unlocking one of the most powerful, emotional, and unforgettable anthems in rock history. It would give birth to a song that rocketed a band of street-level outlaws into the global spotlight. A song that turned chaos into legacy. A song that made Guns N' Roses immortal. But here's the twist. The band hated it. The man who wrote the riff swore he never wanted to play it again, and the love story behind its lyrics ended in heartbreak, violence, and regret. This is the story of Sweet Child O' Mine, the accidental song that changed everything. You're watching Behind the Hit. Here we uncover the secrets, scandals, and heartbreak hiding inside the songs you thought you knew. If you love music, but crave the untold truth behind it, subscribe now, because the story you're about to hear will make you listen to Sweet Child O' Mine in a way you never have before. The year was 1985. Los Angeles was burning with neon lights, sleazy clubs, and the sound of hair metal. Motley Crue ruled the Sunset Strip, Poison painted their faces, and packed the whiskey a go-go. Record labels were hungry for the next big thing, and they wanted it fast, loud, and flashy. Into that world stumbled a group of misfits: Axl Rose, Slash, Izzy Stradlin, Duff McKagan, and Steven Adler. They didn't look polished, they didn't dress like stars, they looked like trouble, because they were. They fought on stage, they brawled in bars, they slept on couches, stole food, and lived on nothing but beer, cigarettes, and ambition. But when they played live, the room changed. Their shows were electric, dangerous, unpredictable, like watching a bomb go off and not knowing where the shrapnel would land. Still, no matter how raw their energy, Guns N' Roses faced a problem. In a city overflowing with bands, they needed more than danger to rise above the noise. They needed a song, not just a riff, not just a rocker, a song that could carry them from dingy LA clubs to radios across the world. And the truth was, none of them believed that kind of song was in them. They were outlaws, not hitmakers. They weren't writing love ballads for prom dances. They were writing about drugs, sex, and streets that swallowed you alive. So how did a riff that Slash himself thought was a joke become the song that changed their lives forever? It started in a cramped rehearsal space. Slash picked up his guitar, not with the intention of writing the next great anthem, but simply to warm up. Guitarists do it every day. Little finger exercises, scales, nonsense patterns to get the blood flowing. Slash's pattern was playful, almost childish. He later called it a circus riff, something you'd expect at a carnival, not a stadium. To him it was nothing, just a warm-up. But in that moment, one person in the room heard something different. Axl Rose. He froze. He knew Slash wasn't trying to write anything serious, but something about those notes stopped him cold. There was melody there. Emotion, a kind of nostalgic sweetness buried under the silliness. "Play that again," Axl demanded. Slash shrugged, rolled his eyes, and repeated it. Duff McKagan jumped in with a bass line. Izzy Stradlin began layering chords on top, and suddenly, what had been a mindless warm-up transformed into a structure. A song was taking shape. Axl disappeared into his notebook. He had lyrics not written for the band, not meant for the stage, but private words he'd scribbled down about his girlfriend, Erin Everly. Lines that spoke of innocence, childhood, and the beauty of love. And just like that, an accidental riff collided with a hidden love poem. Within minutes, they had the skeleton of what would become Sweet Child O' Mine. The band had no idea that this little Frankenstein of a song would define them, but they also had no idea just how much pain it would bring. Axl Rose was not known for being soft. He was volatile, explosive, a man with a voice that could scream like a banshee or cut like a knife.
I look into your eyes, I can see love restrained.
His lyrics were usually filled with rage, rebellion, and fire, but Erin Everly changed that. She was the daughter of Don Everly, part of the legendary Everly Brothers, so music was already in her blood. But more importantly, she was the only person who could calm Axl. Their relationship was passionate, yes, but it was also fragile, fiery, and destructive. They loved hard, and they fought harder. And yet in Erin, Axl saw innocence. He saw beauty he couldn't find anywhere else. So when he scribbled the words that would become Sweet Child O' Mine, he wasn't thinking about the band. He was thinking about her. She's got a smile that it seems to me / reminds me of childhood memories where everything was as fresh as the bright blue sky. The lyrics weren't angry, they weren't bitter, they were pure, honest, almost shocking considering who they came from. And when Axl sang them over Slash's riff, the entire band felt it. Something real had landed, something that didn't sound like anything else in their set. They didn't know it yet, but they had stumbled onto lightning in a bottle, the kind of song that comes once in a career, if at all. But lightning doesn't just light the sky, it burns, and for Guns N' Roses, the burn would come soon enough. The first time Guns N' Roses performed Sweet Child O' Mine live, they could feel the difference immediately. Their other songs made people thrash, scream, and riot, but this one made people sing.
Oh, where do we go? Oh, where do we go now?
The crowd leaned forward. They memorized the words instantly. They shouted the chorus back at the band with something close to devotion. But not everyone on stage was thrilled / hated it. To him, it wasn't real Guns N' Roses. It was too soft, too polished, too pretty. In his mind, it felt like a betrayal of their identity. He didn't want Guns N' Roses to be remembered for a love song. He wanted fire, grit, sleaze, and raw power. And yet, here was this accidental tune, taking on a life of its own. When the band recorded Appetite for Destruction, their debut album, they didn't expect Sweet Child O' Mine to lead the way. But record executives saw what Slash didn't, a global hit. They demanded it be released as a single, and when it dropped in 1988, something unbelievable happened. The song exploded. Not just in Los Angeles, not just in the US, but everywhere. Within weeks, Sweet Child O' Mine climbed to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was the band's first and only chart-topping single in America. The band that had clawed its way out of the gutters suddenly had an anthem that crossed over to radio, MTV, and mainstream America. But was that success a blessing or a curse? Because what Sweet Child O' Mine gave them in fame, it also took away in freedom, and the cracks it exposed were already starting to tear the band apart. The single alone could have been big, but in 1988, no song could dominate without one thing: a music video. MTV was at its peak. A video wasn't just a commercial, it was a weapon. And Guns N' Roses, a band built on danger, needed to prove they weren't just another group of LA sleaze rockers. The director Nigel Dick shot the video in a simple warehouse setting. No special effects, no gimmicks, no glossy production. Just the band, stripped down, surrounded by their girlfriends, playing the song as if it were just another rehearsal. What made it different was its honesty. On MTV, where glam metal bands preened and posed in glitter and makeup, Guns N' Roses looked raw, sweaty, and real. Slash stalked the floor, cigarette dangling. Duff looked like he hadn't slept in days. And Axl, with his bandana and piercing eyes, sang directly into the camera with an intensity that couldn't be faked. The video went into heavy rotation, and suddenly Guns N' Roses weren't just a band you caught at the Troubadour. They were a band every kid in America and beyond knew by name. But as the cameras turned them into icons behind the lens, their private lives were unraveling. At the heart of Sweet Child O' Mine was a love story. But love, especially for Axl Rose, was never simple. Erin Everly had inspired the song. She was the muse. The lyrics were his confession, his way of showing a softer side the world rarely saw. But their relationship was far from a fairy tale. Friends described it as passionate and toxic, swinging between tenderness and violence. Reports emerged of screaming fights, police visits, and explosive confrontations. By the early 90s, Axl and Erin married, briefly. The marriage collapsed within a year, buried under allegations of abuse, jealousy, and rage. Erin later admitted that much of their time together was painful, scarred by Axl's temper. The love that had created Sweet Child O' Mine had soured into something dark, and Slash, who had always hated the song, felt vindicated. To him it was proof that the track was built on false promises, too sentimental, too unlike the band's real essence. He once admitted he hated it with a passion, and the more the world demanded it, the more he wanted to bury it. But burying it was impossible, because by now, Sweet Child O' Mine wasn't just a song, it was a global phenomenon. The numbers were staggering. Sweet Child O' Mine didn't just hit #1 in the US South. It stormed charts worldwide, from London to Tokyo, from small-town radios to massive arenas. Those opening notes became instantly recognizable. It wasn't just a hit, it was an anthem. The success catapulted Appetite for Destruction to heights no debut album had ever seen. It became, and still remains, the best-selling debut album in history, moving more than 30 million copies worldwide. Suddenly, Guns N' Roses weren't just the kings of Sunset Boulevard. They were the biggest band on earth. They outsold their heroes, they outsold their peers, and everywhere they went, fans demanded the song that Slash had once dismissed as a circus riff. But success had a cost. Fame amplified their addictions. Drugs and alcohol flooded their world. Ego clashes grew sharper, and the very song that gave them everything became the one thing they couldn't escape. By the early 1990s, the band was fractured. Axl became more controlling. Slash drowned himself in heroin and alcohol. Izzy Stradlin, who had quietly shaped the band's sound, grew tired of the chaos and walked away. And yet every night when they stepped on stage, there was one demand they could never ignore: Sweet Child O' Mine. Crowds of 50,000 screamed for it. Fans held up lighters, begging for those opening notes. And no matter how much Slash hated it, no matter how much it reminded Axl of Aaron, they had no choice. They played it again and again and again. It was the song that made them legends, and the chain that bound them to a past they couldn't escape. But decades later, when the band finally shattered and reunited, one question remained: could they face the ghost of Sweet Child O' Mine again? For years, Guns N' Roses existed in fragments. Axl toured with hired guns. Slash and Duff moved on. The dream of a reunion felt impossible, but in 2016, against all odds, the classic lineup reunited. The announcement sent shockwaves through the rock world. Fans wondered, would they still have it? Would they play the hits that had made them icons? The moment of truth came on stage. The lights dimmed. Tens of thousands of fans roared, waiting, and then Slash stepped forward, cigarette in his mouth, Les Paul in his hands. He struck those opening notes, and the world lost its mind. The crowd erupted in a roar so loud it drowned the music. Axl stepped to the microphone, his voice carrying those words he once wrote for Aaron Everly, words that had haunted him, words he had almost buried. For one moment, decades of bitterness melted away. The ghost of Sweet Child O' Mine was alive again, and it proved something undeniable. Love it or hate it, this was the song that would outlive them all. In the end, Sweet Child O' Mine was an accident, a riff meant as a joke, a notebook of private lyrics never intended for the world. But accidents can shape destiny. It became the song that gave Guns N' Roses their first #1, the song that turned a gang of street outlaws into global icons, and the song that still echoes across generations. For Axl Rose, it will always carry the ghost of a love gone wrong. For Slash, it will always be the riff he never wanted to play. And yet for fans, it's eternal. A love song disguised as a rock anthem, born by accident, immortal by fate. It wasn't supposed to happen, but maybe that's why it did. This was Behind the Hit. If you felt the weight of this story, subscribe for more, because the songs you think you know always have secrets. And sometimes, the accidents are the ones that change everything.